Hello, all, and welcome to the closing plenary of the 2024 Open Texas Conference. I think we're going to get our slide up right now because we have the live streaming screen happening. The Open Texas Conference is sponsored and convened by two cooperating organizations, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, which is the state agency that serves as a resource partner and advocate for higher education in Texas, and the Texas Digital Library, a library consortium providing services that enable free and open access to scholarly, cultural heritage, and educational materials. My name is Kyla Torrey. I'm Senior Director of Digital Learning at the Coordinating Board, and I want to welcome you all and thank you so much for attending Open Texas 2024. We welcome you to introduce yourself and to ask questions in chat or use the Q&A feature in the attendee website throughout today's panel. Please be aware that we are recording this session and that recorded sessions will be available within the conference attendee hub for 30 days. Following the 30 days, the recordings will be accessible through the Open Texas YouTube repository, and we will put that link in chat. The link to the conference code of conduct will also be placed in chat for your information. Now let's talk about today's plenary. Our closing plenary for Open Texas 2024 is entitled Open Horizons, Texas National and Global Perspectives on the Open Education Movement. We want to thank you all so much for joining us, and I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Judith Sebesta, who is our moderator for this panel discussion, and we will get started.
Thank you so much, Dr. Torrey. I very much appreciate it. And I would just like to thank the Coordinating Board, the Texas Digital Library, and the steering and program committees of the Open Texas Conference for inviting me to moderate what I think will prove to be a very lively and exciting discussion. So I would like to ask our panelists, our distinguished panelists today, to take a few moments to introduce themselves. And why don't we go ahead and start with Dr. Singh, who's going to be providing a state Texas perspective today. Dr. Singh?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Singh. I am the Assistant Commissioner for Digital Learning at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. My division is charged with all things digital learning for the state, specifically the Adapting to Innovation initiative, which deals with artificial intelligence, but I think most proudly the work that we've done in open education, so the entire portfolio from grants, resources, programs to this amazing program. Excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate it. And then here to provide a national perspective as a member of the Doers 3 organization is Jeff. Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Gallant. I run Affordable Learning Georgia at the University System of Georgia. And yeah, I'm the vice chair of Doers, which is an organization that brings statewide and Canadian province-wide organizations that further OER in like a big bird's eye view way together to convene, to create things like benchmarking for stuff like promotion and tenure, to explore new ways of doing bigger things with research, exploring innovation and equity in OER. So it's been really great working with Doers and looking forward to the panel today.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate it. And then given the task of providing a complete global perspective is our third panelist, Alan. Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, and a big howdy to everybody down there in Texas. Thankfully, Michelle has the map of the world above that I can reference. And if you follow Texas north quite a bit and cross the border, I'm located in Saskatchewan, Canada, and that's my base for working for this organization, Open Education Global. Since global's in the name, I'm supposed to know everything that's going on in the world. I will try to do my best because there's a lot of interesting things and try to relate it to this wonderful conference that I'm glad I've had a chance to be in some of the sessions. And so, yeah, again, Texas we know is pretty darn big, and I've driven across it several times, and it's not like saying you know Texas, and then the world is even bigger, but it's exciting work to be part of, and I'm really happy to be here.
Alan, thank you so much. Thanks for those introductions, all three of you. And why don't we go ahead and dive into our questions? I've got a good one for you here to start out. In one word and one word only, What is your primary emotion when considering the future of open education from your perspective? Alan, would you like to start?
Oh, good. I get to go first. Hope.
Hope. Thank you. Thank you. Michelle?
Excitement.
Thank you so much. And y'all are doing a great job of keeping it to one word, but hopefully there will be opportunities for you maybe to elaborate on these responses later. And last but not least, Jeff?
Solid.
Solid. Solid. We have hope, excitement, and solid. And then I see that we've got some responses coming in on the CVent message board or chat board. And some of these echo and are actually exactly what you said. We've got optimistic, enthusiastic, challenging. It's a little bit of a different perspective, but not necessarily a negative one. I think we all like to be challenged. Hopeful and excited. So we've got a couple of the same and then some similar, but maybe a little different, just depending on your perspective. I will say that I was very taken during this conference a couple of times by a two-word phrase that was spoken in regard to our current moment in open education in the state. And Kyla, Dr. Torrey, mentioned this, and she also referenced that Nicole Allen at Spark had also used this phrase. And I think it's a really good one, that we're in a pivotal moment right now. This is not a feeling, an emotion, but just kind of an observation about where we're at in open education, not just in the state, but I think we could argue nationally and potentially globally as well. I know Dr. Torrey had referenced that we're in a moment of some really exciting, but also potentially challenging emerging technology. Things like inclusive access and automatic billing provide some opportunities or challenges depending on how you look at it. There's some really significant federal rulemaking and regulations going on. And then I think this was really salient, is that we're at a moment when OER is no longer nascent. It's becoming established. And so it's on that foundation that I'd like to kind of move forward with some additional questions. And please keep those one words coming in. We've got reliable, curiosity, determined. So please keep those coming in and we can keep referencing them hopefully as we go. But here's my next question for our panelists today. What are the most significant achievements of the open education movement from your perspective? Jeff, could we maybe start with you on this one?
Yeah, if I'm interpreting this right as both movement and community and even field, I think one of the most significant achievements, especially in the past 5 or so years, is community ownership of the larger administrative tasks behind open education. The community has really taken off in directing and fueling the Open Education Conference here in North America. Doers is another example of that, where system office folks and consortial folks like me will often hear open education conversations and think that they're going to be able to provide advice to folks in one institution. And then it just kind of winds up that the mechanics are a little different and a little weirder over on our side or a little weirder on their side. And so having a place where everyone can get together and say, we all have this weird position together. How can we make things even better by collaborating? How can we improve our own positions, provide leadership opportunities for people who are new into something like this? The same thing is going on with the Open Education Network. The idea of raising awareness at a grassroots level through advocates and champions, but scaled to a national level, is really exciting to see. And I feel like the Open Education Network is getting to that point where they're hitting a stride. They've got a nice proven formula and they're moving forward with it. So this kind of organization, I think, is one of the most significant achievements I've seen in the open education movement.
And that certainly follows nicely along that idea that we're no longer nascent in this field, that we're becoming more established. And I think that that provides the opportunity for these sorts of more sophisticated and advanced activities, Jeff. Anyone else?
Well, and I can jump in. We have such a rich history of OER in Texas, right? Everything. We have some very recognizable names. OpenStax is one of our most valued partners in the state and recognized everywhere. But I think to echo Jeff's sentiment is we are at a point right now where our digital community is now driving our work. It is not a centralized and let's just try to engage everyone across the state. No, it is the state and the community members, practitioners that are out there doing this on a day-to-day basis that are informing the direction for the state. And that takes a lot. It takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of communication. And it's really exciting that we've been able to formalize a lot of the support that we have from the state with legislation, with landscape reports and research, with the OER Texas repository. But this partnership that has just come to life with not only state members, but global partners, national partners, it's beautiful. There's this nice cadence of development that we are now in. And I'd like to say that we're setting the standard for a lot of our fellow enthusiasts across the nation. We are the ones that are inviting people to the table to have this conversation. So I like to say that we went from trying to find our seat at the table to throwing the dinner party and inviting everyone to come along.
Michelle, that is so well said. And you know what I've been so impressed with in Texas is that there's been this scaffolding approach by the coordinating board, by your division, that has started with the landscape analysis, research, data, needs assessments to find out what the exact needs were and are at the institutions across the state, and then working with partner organizations, but among yourselves, your incredible small but mighty team, to address those needs with various supports in conjunction with the support that the legislature has provided for open education. It's been extensive support. So, thank you, Michelle. Outstanding. You want to move out to a global perspective, Alan, or should we move on to another question? What do you think?
No, I got a lot on my list
Okay,
here.
okay.
I mean, first of all, that we even say the word open education movement, that says a lot. And what struck me last year when I was part of the Open Education Conference, I think I started observing or participating in 2009, and you would almost recognize the names and places that were there. And at last year's conference, it just struck me there are so many more people that are part of this movement. And that's really rewarding, especially this role that I just, every time I hear it, OER librarian is so integral to everything that's happening. There's a lot here, but around the world. And so, and I'm a real fan of the work that Michelle Reed is doing on that, her presentation on extending that to look at public libraries. I think that's really important, and that's expanding beyond the academic. And you know, we're working with, there's a lot of international organizations that are really inspiring. There's a European network of open education librarians that are working across Europe. And especially we've been involved with the Australia Council of University Librarians. And in a short time, I think they have participation from every university in Australia and New Zealand, and part of a collective that is helping create and promote open education. And there's a real spirit of cooperation there. And also, there's extraordinary individuals out there, and some of them are, you know, here. I got to know a librarian at the Ukrainian State University of Science named Tetiana Kolesnikova. And she has this remarkable story of resilience under the Russian bombing attack, of how they rallied and were able to like reach their faculty, their students who were displaced in extraordinary conditions that, you know, like, no offense, Jeff, a hurricane is a big thing, but being attacked by another country and still as conditions, and OER was not new. They've been involved for a long time with this. This was not a new thing. And then I just want to mention, because I was in the town hall breakout and met Michael, I hope he's here, who is in the music recording field. And we were talking about the difficulties of open in that realm, because ownership and protection of music is such an important thing. And I came across this story yesterday on NPR. There's a music producer named Kevin MacLeod, and he writes commercial music, and he's been running it under the site called Incompetech. that I've used for a long time in teaching students media production. And he gives his music away. And so one of his old songs is now one of the most popular songs used in TikTok to remix. Like, he is one of the leading, and he gives away his music. And he says it was Creative Commons really that escalated a lot of that in his philosophy. And at the same time, Michael, he's making 7-figure income not because he gives away his music, because other people hire him to do work. And that's what Open does at the individual level. And the last thing I really want to mention, we say Wikipedia and we know what that's all about, but it's an extraordinary accomplishment of open collaboration. And the fact that if you had said, like, a long time ago, like, this wiki is going to replace the industry of encyclopedias as the base of knowledge, you would have been laughed at. And, we went through the cycle where, oh, you can't trust Wikipedia. And now there are so many things that happen within Wikipedia that exemplifies the open movement. And just last, from the world perspective, have to point out the role of UNESCO in developing the recommendation for OERs. I hear it mentioned a lot as the explanation to help people understand and the importance. And that's ongoing work in the world. And Texas is definitely contributing to that.
Oh, Alan, thank you. And thanks for bringing it back to Texas. And by the way, one thing I'd like to kind of mention pragmatically, I hope Jeff doesn't mind, but we're so glad Jeff is here with us because he is located in the Atlanta metro region. And I hope everyone is aware that there has been a storm that has been approaching it has hit unfortunately, the Florida coast. And then Jeff was a little worried that it would affect the Atlanta region so much that he wouldn't be able to join us today. But we're so glad that you are with us. And we do hope that anyone who might be tuning in from that general area is safe today. But one other thing I'd like to say before I move to our next question is just that I think some of what you have said, coming back to, again, the hallmarks of a movement that is becoming more and more established. We have more cultivation opportunities to cultivate leaders, referencing a little bit of what Jeff was talking about. We also have increasing ways that we're able to recognize those who are leading, but also in the trenches of this work. Individuals, organizations, what have you. And that can be anything from the work that Doers has done to advocate for promotion and recognition of open education work and promotion, tenure, and reappointment, all the way to the amazing awards that Open Education Global offers those who are engaged in this field. So thank you for referencing those, because I think it really speaks to the growing maturity of open education as a field. I'm gonna throw this next question, I think, to you, Michelle. So let me pose the question, and let's see if maybe you've got something to respond. And there's been a little bit of alluding to some of what I think could be some responses to this question. But how, and Michelle, to you, do you envision the role of OER and or open pedagogy evolving in the next 5 years, particularly for our purposes in higher education? Like, just, in 5 years from now, where do you see us? What are some hallmarks of this field in 5 years?
5 years in technology is a long time. 5 years in our field is a long time. But definitely to shout out to Nicole and to Kathy and to Liliana, who were with us at our town hall yesterday with WICHE, WCET, Spark, and Doers, having this formalizing this national strategy for open education. I'm really hoping that within the next 5 years, we aren't moving just alongside each other, but we're working together in a unified strategy that's going to move the entire nation forward. And so I'm really enthusiastic about that. I'm really hopeful that that work will already have reached a level that it is now being communicated, and also will start to gain evidence as to that being a very valid strategy, the impact that it's having, and so forth, which I think is a very critical part of the work that we do. We also need to have the evidence that backs what we're doing. And then, of course, the elephant in the room, we have artificial intelligence, this rapidly emerging innovation, creation, development time that we are currently in right now. And what I am hoping is that people will recognize the open principles that are the foundation of us being successful in artificial intelligence and working alongside developers and development, really focusing on this sharing concept and bringing this level of awareness that we as practitioners know we are actively engaged in open principle. We're actively engaged in open pedagogy and sharing. Not everyone knows that. And not everyone at this time realizes that they're engaged in open practice. And so I'm hoping in the next 5 years that'll the level of awareness will be so high that people just automatically know, oh, this is OE in action. This is what we're doing. And if we can get there together, making sure that we're advocating for our work and champions for our work, that would be a wonderful place to be in maybe not 5 years, because the way that this is emerging and the speed it's emerging at, it may be a 3-year marker, hopefully, and then going for the 5-year.
Michelle, I think we would have been remiss if we didn't bring that elephant into the room a little bit with artificial intelligence. But I love that you just brought up the fact that the idea of open transcends our discipline in our field, and it truly is a mindset and you know, a professional and maybe even personal way of life, and that there's a lot to be learned in other disciplines for the idea that all knowledge should be open and shared. And I'm also glad that you brought up the important concept of evidence for impact, and that we need to, we're getting better, I think, at that. But we need to keep growing the research and the body of evidence that we have, so that we can utilize that for funders, for you know, for others to whom we need to advocate for this field. I mean, Texas has done a great job of that, be it from their landscape analysis to the data that you all are collecting, robust data from the grant programs that Texas offers. And you put out a report as a result of the data that you are collecting from those in the trenches of working on various open education projects with the support of those grants. Other thoughts 5 years from now? Who would like to prognosticate a little bit about this?
The crystal ball is out. But I threw in the Padlet. It just occurred to me during the town hall is like, I would like to see the future where you don't have to explain as much what OER is, like, you know, and you know, you see that happening because more people are entering. Obviously, like, I don't want to, like, we're going to be talking about AI for a long time. I think, you know, down in the other question, I think it challenges a lot of our understandings about what openness, transparency means in this, and also what is our agency in this. And I had a conversation with our board member, Rajiv Jangyani, who's like one of the pioneers of open pedagogy. And he really stressed the importance of having a critical literacy about that, and asking hard questions, and encouraging people to really push those boundaries. Around the world, you know, we have, you know, obviously we have a lot of emphasis on OER and OER materials, and, you know, we see more addressing open pedagogy, which is like that natural evolution. In many parts of the world, like, you know, what's popular is a thing that seems like a passive fad, where MOOCs, massive online courses. There are huge opportunities for learning in China, in Finland, in India, in Mexico, in Taiwan. And still, it's really important as a way for universities to share. And it's, you know, it's the extension of the original MIT OpenCourseware idea, which is still powerful. MIT OpenCourseware, like, if you ever go there and read some of those stories of impact that it has on people in the world who are able to get their own education independently because the materials have released, and that whole concept of the MIT courses are not an MIT education, that always rang true to me. It's not about the stuff, it's about the experience of learning. The other thing really exciting is like the extent of OER being available in other languages. And so in terms of reaching other people in their native languages, there's a fantastic project from India called Storyweaver. And it's from a book publisher called Pratham Books, who's been doing this for a long time, is that they feel it's really important for children to learn to read stories in their own language. And so it's got stories that have been translated into about 800 languages, and their entire philosophy is a spirit of openness before they even found out there was this thing called Creative Commons licenses. And it's not just for that part of the world. There are stories in Cree, there are stories a lot in Spanish, and so it's just a fabulous. If you're ever really interested to see what openness looks like in the world, I encourage you to see that. When you look at the providers and supporters of open textbooks, Pressbooks, if you go to their directory, you can filter by languages. There's like 107 in Tamil, which is an Indian language. LibreText has an entire library in Spanish and Ukrainian. And OpenStax, of course, has theirs in multilingual as well. And, AI comes into this. AI is going to enable this. There's a small project that I've always been intrigued with that's working in parts of Ghana and Mexico, and it's really trying to make OER content available again to students in their own language. Like, the importance of being able to learn in your native language is really critical, and we have the tools and ability and interest in doing that. And then the other thing is that, there's the other, it's called the other opens: open science, open data, open access, and and the whole world in the galleries are, the GLAM sort of realm of things. So it's like, outside of education, libraries and museums are part of this education universe. So there's like many opportunities and excitement out there. And these are going on in Texas as well as out there in the world.
Yeah, and Alan, I always appreciate that you kind of help connect the global to the local for those of us for whom Texas is local. And, we're talking about no less than the democratization of education and knowledge. It can be transforming. I think it already has been and will continue to be. Jeff, let me see what your response might be. And then I actually want to come back and see if Michelle and Alan have any responses to your response or to each other's responses, because I think this is a really important issue. So we might pause on this question before we move on to the other. But Jeff, thoughts from the national perspective, or if you want to bring Georgia into it as well, please feel free to.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that something you've already mentioned, which was open education kind of moving forward as a field. Michelle was mentioning that this has gone from a few open ed folks wanting to get a place at the table to hosting the party. I kind of feel like sometimes we are hosting a party, but it's like one of those raves in New York where you get coordinates and you have to go find it somewhere and you don't know who's putting it on, but the music's really good. And you ask somebody, oh, hey, who's doing this? We should do this again. And they're like, it might be over here. It depends on who's doing what. Like, at some point, the open education movement needs to be a field with a voice. And the ideas that are happening from that national coordination perspective that you heard in the town hall, those are what I see to be the next 5-year future of open in terms of administrative practice. Finally, we should be able to have a collective voice when, let's say, an article in higher education talks about the cost of resources and talks about a survey that looked at the whole thing about the cost of resources and mentions as a panacea to this inclusive access, and then ends its article. Who sends out the letter that says, hey, you guys forgot about open educational resources? They're not only super helpful, but they're prominent and they really should be acknowledged here. Doers wound up doing that this time around, but through that whole process of Doers writing that, we were going, it would be really nice if we had an organization that actually had this in their mission, because we just kind of did it because we happened to be the organization of some organizations. What would be really nice is if we had advocates out there who are looking nationally and can communicate nationally and can communicate up the chain in ways that someone from Georgia can't. Like, I can't just go into a national thing and say, hey, I'm from Georgia, here's what we do, and then that'll translate over. But there are folks out there who could do this for the entire US, who could coordinate our voices and make them way more heard and way more formalized. So I think that that's a really strong part of it. I do also see at the same time value in decentralization. I do not think that we should just, bring everybody into one phalanx and that's it. That's our open education movement and that's all. The cool stuff that happens in sprawling open movements from open source and open science all the way over to open ed are what makes it special. It makes it human. So we will have a push and pull as this goes forward. We do need a central voice, and we do need decentralization at the same time. So the role of OER in higher education is going to be a bit in flux depending on what it is you want at your institution, what your state needs, and what is happening at a nationwide scale.
Jeff, that's so well said, Jeff. And we have to make sure that there's opportunities for local context, for regional, for those kinds of flavors to be in the conversations, but at the same time having some coordination at a national and or global level. But I wanted to give a moment, Michelle, Alan, did y'all have any responses to this, or want to follow up with your initial response?
I would love to, Jeff. That was very eloquently stated, and I think one of the things that we're very proud of is this mutual respect and this mutual partnership that we have in Texas. So doing exactly what you're saying is, there are instances when we see articles in the Chronicle or Higher Ed Dive, any one of these different that are published, and about presidents, administrators that are talking about, wouldn't it be great if we started doing these things? And all of a sudden we come in, see these, respond to those particular administrators and say, here's what we're doing. The beauty is that if we don't see those articles, or if there are conversations that are happening, we have the champions, the advocates, the practitioners, and the relationships at these institutions, that it comes to us and says, can we get your support in having a conversation with our administrators about the resources and the movement in Texas? And that conversation goes twofold. So we're going to find them somewhere, right? If we have the responsibility of representing and engaging from the state level, but to Judith's point, to everyone's point, we rely so heavily on the work because Texas is quite large geographically, and we have so many different institutions. We really rely heavily on their sight into what is happening locally, that then they trust us to come and support what they're doing locally. We also get out there locally to all of these different places and try to have these conversations. So I completely agree with what Jeff is saying. I think that is how we need to be advocates for the work that we're doing, because a lot of it, I think, is the lack of clarity to what has been said already. People don't fully understand what open means. And if we have that role and we can embrace that role and elevate that level of education, that level of awareness, that would be all of us moving together.
Michelle, what I have appreciated so much about the work that your division has done, the Division of Digital Learning there at the Coordinating Board, is working to build trust and working to build transparency within your division and in your work with the institutions across Texas and with other organizations that you partner with. So, and Alan, let's let you say something. And I also, by the way, there's a really great question that has come in from our attendees. We'll come to that hopefully in a bit. So, but Alan, some thoughts or additional responses?
Oh yeah, and to see the data yesterday, I was really moved by the part where the percentage of Texas institutions that weren't involved in OER disappeared to zero. That's really profound and says a lot. I know when I started my career at the Maricopa Community Colleges, the largest community college system, 10 independent colleges. And, I was at a central office just trying to get people to coordinate, and people would say like, oh, we're too big to cooperate like that. And it's like, no, it's quite possible. And so to see this going on at Texas, just for reference, in other parts of the world, there's incredible cooperation at a national level going on in Germany. There's an organization called SURF in the Netherlands. And it's at a cooperative level. Like there is funding and things to support to make these happen. There's an open education organization in Japan. There's an OER Africa trying to advocate for the entire continent there. So this cooperative approach definitely works, especially with developing things like your fellowship program. I mean, that's very powerful. And then I also just want to mention, I was just in a previous conversation, there was a project that started in 2011 or 12 called the OER World Map. And the idea was an open resource where anybody could contribute projects or people or organizations. The idea was to show globally what was going on internationally. And it was run by a library organization in Germany. They kind of lost their funding. It kind of like went away. They're bringing it back. And again, it's with some support by a national organization. And so there are going to be opportunities to be able to see what's going on in the world and to share, but also to contribute. The idea is also to be able to see collectively in some map what's going on in any part of the world. So the idea of these, just word of the large phalanx, I so appreciate that. If you've ever tried to like build and promote a repository, it's like tireless, endless work, but it's important. But at the same time, what makes it beneficial is you get something by contributing. You're helping the larger social good, the common good, but you can get something out of it. If it can give you information and it can show you something important, that's sort of the magic balance of these open sort of cooperative projects.
Thank you so much, Alan and Jeff and Michelle, for your responses to that question. And to me, here you are kind of supporting your initial emotions that you express to us of hope, of excitement, of solidity. I think we're seeing that. We're seeing that in the examples that you're giving, in the work that you and your colleagues are doing in your respective organizations and agencies. And I've been so pleased to see other comments come through in response to this primary emotion when considering the future of OpenEd. We've got determined. I love that. Essential. I love that too. Passion, joy, perseverance, transformative, and nervous but excited. I like that those two go together. Let me pose one more question that we kind of had pre-prepared to you all, and then I'll go to some attendee questions after that, because we've got a couple of good ones that have come in. But let me just ask, what lessons have you learned in your amazing work that all of you have done that you think could translate to individuals in another role of the open education movement? Jeff, would you be willing to start us out here? What lessons learned can you communicate to others?
So when I was asked to start up Affordable Learning Georgia, I did not know what OER were. I was somebody who was talking with folks about possibly making the MOOCs that were starting to be created in our system shared under Creative Commons license. I had no idea that there was a thing called open education that was
Jeff,
already.
Do you mind if I ask when that was?
2013 was when we did our pilot project. And so jumping into something like this, I felt really intimidated. Going to Washington, D.C. that year for a very small open education conference full of like experienced, powerful, knowledgeable folks, I was like, holy moly, what can I possibly do here? But being on the other side of that 10 years later, what I would say is don't feel that way. Jump in head first. We'll catch you. I mean, it's hard to catch somebody head first, but we will. If you have any questions, send them right over to the folks who are connected with you on Open. If you've got champions on your campus and you're kind of wondering about something, let them know and get to know Open, get to know about open licensing, get to know the other opens, get to know global open stuff. There's a place for you. We are about to not just have the Open Education Conference, but the annual meeting for doers. And we are going to have an election for someone who's going to be vice chair at that point. And the last time around, the one person that spoke up for vice chair was the one person who got it, and that was me. This time around, I want folks to just be like, yeah, sure, why not? You don't have to be King Open or Queen Open or Supreme Baron Open in order to make a big difference. Jump right in, talk to folks, and take on some leadership roles, and you're worth it. You will do it.
I think I started in open education around the same time, in around 2013. I was working at the coordinating board at that time, and I just found such a generous community who was really living the concept of open in their work, probably in their lives as well. Alan, did you want to respond, and then we'll go to Michelle. Alan, lessons learned?
Yeah. Well, and then I got distracted by great points by Jeff, and so honestly, some of it is often, especially when you're trying to like get things going, it's going to take longer than you think sometimes. And it gets really frustrating. And then I've had things like where, oh, I'm giving up on this project. And then like a month later, someone says, hey, I'm really interested. So be patient with it. And also shed the mantle of having to be an expert. Okay. You don't have to be expert. And honestly, my biggest lesson that I learned from teaching is like, it's okay to mess up in public. Like it's all about, and for anybody, everybody here who teaches in a class, it's like, you think on your feet and you do that, you know, you don't have to be the expert and you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect online. I have terrible typos. I create bad links. You know, the problem is not, you know, addressing the things that you do wrong. And it's humbling. Like people appreciate if you can sort of like recover from something. So you don't have to be perfect. Of course, we want things to be nice and we want things to work all the time, but you know, Zoom lets us down all the time and technology lets us down all the time. It's like the norm. And so that's okay. And so the other thing is like I get the most value out of some of the individual, like the small level, you know, connections that you make. You know, we do some things in our organization. We try to like do these massive, you know, messages and try to reach everybody. But usually what's more effective is when you reach out and just tap someone or a group of people individually and recognize the work that they're doing. Most people feel like their work is not significant, that it's not important, and they're not doing anything like extraordinary. And chances are they are. And that's always been true for teachers in general. And then, you know, I see like the scaffolding, that was a good word for it. Like I was really impressed with the presentation from the Fellows Network in this project. That is really effective. And there's this really effective project that's been out for a couple of years that started at Montgomery College in Maryland. And they develop a fellowship program about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, an open pedagogy fellowship. And it started off small. And what they do is, I forget how many different institutions are involved with it, but they create working groups of mostly faculty, and they group them not only in different disciplines to work together through some open pedagogy, but from different organizations, and talk about a network effect for people to be able to collaborate in their area in chemistry or math or French literature with someone from a different institution. And the whole goal is design their pedagogy around things that support the Sustainable Development Goals, which is such a tie-in for student interest to be saying like, this isn't some abstract concept we're talking about. This is addressing the sustainable goal about environment or education. And so the UN Sustainable Development Goals, it's a great leverage point to sort of build your approach to OER or pedagogy around.
Alan, I'm so glad you mentioned the session on the fellows. I was so inspired. And to me, having a program like that is such a sign of the maturing of this field within the state of Texas. It's amazing, just amazing. And I understand that the kind of the next class or the first class, because the ones that initially came on board are mentors. Now for those who are this kind of first year of the actual fellows, it's just really inspiring. Michelle, can we ask you then about some lessons learned in the state or beyond?
I mean, I just love the fact that we're having this conversation, and it's such a human aspect to what we do, right? We're talking about the humbling position that we're in, the vulnerability that sometimes exists with going into something that you don't feel you're an expert in, but you are an expert in other things, and just leaning into that community. And the fact, I mean, Jeff, we're not going to let, people fall in this. We're going to be supportive. This has been one, and I've been in this industry for quite a while in digital learning, and I too was new to OER, and all of a sudden you're charged with managing this immense portfolio of experts, and I have an amazing team that is recognized in this field. And so I always felt I don't need to know everything. I don't need to know everything. And in fact, I don't know everything. 3 letters that seem simple when you put them together, OER, OE, 2 letters for a really complex subject. But that community has always been support. Don't be afraid to jump in. Don't be afraid to ask to participate in things. Really is open to having individuals volunteer. Everyone is always looking for volunteers. Let's put this one out there. Everyone is always looking for volunteers to engage in work. If you see something that sparks your interest, ask, is it possible for me to participate in this? Or if it's in another state, do you need a pilot institution? Do you need another hands-on reviewer? Do you need an editor? We're always looking to engage people, but we won't know you're out there if you don't let us know that you're out there. And so take that leap and try to do that. Shout out to the fellows, the OER Fellows program that was started as a vision by Dr. Kyla Torre and Carrie Gitz, that have taken this program and designed this robust curriculum alongside some of the leaders and the champions that we have in this state, the founding fellows. Just their energy, their enthusiasm, their leadership has really set that direction. But I also think there will always be something new in this field. There will always be something new, some new project, some new funding, some philanthropic organization that has a new charge where you can find a fit. So just keep looking out there. Always look at the landscape, always look at what is developing so that you can find where your journey starts or where you can amplify your journey. And we're always here to help.
Oh, Michelle, thank you so much. Go ahead, Alan. Go ahead. That's so inspiring.
I mean, we've seen a lot here and heard a lot too about the idea of how cooperation works. And like, yeah, we know what cooperation is, but I wanted to point out, because it's tied in, the reason I chose the word hope was this collaborative project that came out called Higher Education for Good. That was, it's an open published text, if you will, edited by Laura Chernowich from South Africa and Catherine Cronin from Ireland. And there were like 70 some authors around the world, and it's a collection of both stories. There's some music, but it's all about things that sort of like that are positive. It's on the tail end of COVID and saying like, that was terrible, but this is what's good about the world. And those kind of things. And there's other projects. There's a group in the UK that did this whole like AI for Teachers collaborative and 101 success stories. And just getting people together to something they can contribute to. I mean, it's the open pedagogy approach that we see so much when you ask students to do this. Like, we can do that as well. And, you know, it's really powerful to create something where so many people can have a voice in one particular work.
And, you know, by the way, Alan, do you know a lesson I have learned from you specifically? Curiosity. You exhibit this just incredible curiosity for learning, for the new, for trying out things, taking risks. I'm a member of Open Education Global, as you know, and you're often kind of pushing out tools and things that you've tried. Not quite sure it'll be effective, but hey, this is just a new thing that I've discovered, and I'd like to just put it out there, and let's all just see what happens. And I just really have learned a lot about that kind of curious mindset from you. So thank you, Alan.
Honestly, it's hyperlinks. Like, they are everything.
Well, still, I appreciate it. There's somebody out there who's kind of, you know, helping to look at those things and push them out to us, and I truly appreciate it. So we've got a little less than 10 minutes, because I think I'll probably need to turn it back to Dr. Torre before we end. But we've got a couple of great questions that have come in from attendees. So let me ask one here that I think any of you all should be able to respond to if you want. Are there any initiatives for Texas institutions to collaborate nationally or internationally? Any initiatives for Texas institutions to collaborate nationally or internationally?
Oh, definitely.
There are several. They're all here. No, there are several here. The two people you can start talking to find out what those are. No, I think we get invited a lot of times as practitioners, individuals, to participate in things. There are several through doers. There are several projects, of course, through OE Global and the larger Open Education Network. I mean, there are a lot of things. So to Alan's curiosity, look at the hyperlinks within organizations, look at what current organizations are charged with what they're working on. And that's one way to get into those things. And then I'll defer to my colleagues to kind of elaborate on any of those.
And who you're partnering, you know, look at who these organizations are partnering with, because there's often opportunities within those organizations. Like a great partner of the coordinating board is the organization ISKME, the national, if not international organization ISKME. And ISKME manages the repository OER Commons, which has all kinds of opportunities for national, if not international collaborations and work, just to give them a shout out. Jeff?
I think
Alan?
you'll see more on this if you're an individual institution and you want to participate nationally later, because national communication should be something that's more solid than what it is right now. But at the same time, I feel like as institutions come to places like Doers and they're like, well, we're one institution, can we join your group that's about systems and consortia? And it's like, well, not really, because we're systems and consortia. At some point, it really goes back to what is your state system involved in? That's why I really wanted Michelle to answer first, because I feel like you start out, if you're in Texas, start with Texas, see what they're involved in, and if they need any help. Individually and nationally, start with the Open Education Conference. I mean, go there or go there virtually, see what's happening all around you, look at the program and see if there are some impactful projects that are in your wheelhouse that you might want to help with. When Doers first got started, it was 3 systems. It was New York, it was Maryland, and I believe it was BC campus too, but New York and Maryland were the big ones organizing it. And I saw it on the open education program. I'm like, state systems getting together? Oh, okay. So I like went in there and asked a million questions and said, please email me when you start doing this. And they did. So if you're thinking, okay, well, I'm the one person at my institution that wants to get into open education and I don't know where to start. I see that Texas writ large, or THECB, is working on a couple of things, but I can't really get there. Check out what's happening at the Open Education Conference first. Meet folks, talk with folks, and you'll start getting the idea, I think.
Thanks, Jeff. And Alan, any thoughts?
I will. First, I'm going to make my plug for Open Education Week that we coordinate second week of March every year, and it's a completely distributed event. So the whole idea is that institutions or individuals, they can run something locally. It can be online. It doesn't have to be. There's a lot of great, like, lunch conversations, but it's sort of a nice magnet to create something that's meaningful at your institution that can sort of get the word out about open education, because it's part of a larger, international event going on. There's tons of great things. One of the mentorship idea is really powerful. So I'm glad to see it's going on there. There's a program called Open Education for a Better World that goes on, and it invites people who are interested in doing something in open resources or open pedagogy, and they submit a proposal and they get paired with sort of an expert practitioner, and they sort of work together collaboratively to sort of make their idea come to life. And so it's a wonderful fellowship model, as well as there's a thing out of the UK called the GoGN, which is this network of graduate students who are doing research in open education. And so it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a fellowship, but it's much more than that. So they collaborate, they network you with other people who are researching open education. And I hear more and more from people what we need going forward is to be doing more of this research. And so it's very important to be able to have this understanding through research about what's effective, what's happening, what's changing, what's developing. And so the practices are important, and the research and understanding of it as well. And there's a lot. I sent like my long list of links, because I love links, to Carrie. So you're free to share that, Carrie, with this afterward.
That was a great question. That came from Yokabet. I hope I'm saying that correctly. So thank you so much for that question. And I'm getting a little bit of a message from Kyla saying that we'd probably better wrap it up. We had another really great question come from an attendee about equitable access and universal access and whether that will support or inhibit, I think, innovation and future movement in the field. But I think we're going to have to let that stand. So sorry about that, Laurie, because that was a really great question. But I think probably I will turn it over to Dr. Torrey to wrap up this final session of the conference. And thank you so much, Michelle, Jeff, and Alan. You made my job so easy. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. That was really, it's just such an inspiring and interesting panel. And I think there are, there's a novel's worth of resources linked in the chat. So that's exciting too. Hopefully we can get those to share to everyone who's here and everyone across the state. So it's me again, Dr. Kyla Torrey, Senior Director of Digital Learning at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Hi, you're probably tired of hearing from me by now. But I would like to say, just on behalf of the Texas Digital Library and the Coordinating Board, I want to thank all of you for your participation and for sharing your experiences and insights throughout the past 3 days. I know that I've come away really inspired and with a whole list of new ideas that our team is probably not thrilled about. And I hope the same is true for all of you. It has been a really amazing conference. I think it's also been a large one. We've had over 1,100 registrants, and I think that list is, over 1,100 registrants from Texas and well beyond. We've had over 80 Texas institutions represented, and also K-12 schools, nonprofit and industry partners, public libraries, and participants from 32 other states and 7 other countries. So that is amazing. And we want to thank all of you for your enthusiasm for open education in Texas. I also want to express our gratitude to the incredible conference co-chairs, Dr. Tanja Connerly and Nikki Whiteside of San Jacinto College, for their guidance, perseverance, and wisdom throughout the conference planning process, and for all of the energy and enthusiasm they brought to Open Texas 2024. Thank you both so much. And we could not have done it without our planning committee chairs, Beatriz Canales from San Antonio College, Deanne Ivey from the University of Texas at San Antonio, Dr. Elizabeth Rodriguez from Laredo College, and Dr. Ken Caravo from Baylor University. Thank you all for your leadership, and thank you as well to the many, many committee members who volunteered countless hours to make Open Texas 2024 a motivating and fun experience for the Texas open education community. If you don't want the party to end, I don't blame you, and I have good news. There are many ways to stay connected with Open Texas, the Texas Digital Library, and the Coordinating Board's Division of Digital Learning, and the larger open education community. If you're interested in being part of the planning for the next Open Texas, let us know. You can email open.ed.texas@gmail.com, or you can indicate your interest on the conference survey. Please let us know how we did, and if you'd like to see and what you'd like to see next time by completing our conference evaluation, that is going to be linked in the chat for you. So we ask that please let us know how we can improve next time, and also what you liked, because we like the praise. There are many national and state open education events coming up. You can join conversations this month about national coordination hosted by Spark, Doers, and the Regional Interstate Higher Education Compacts. Those were the conversations that were discussed in the town hall yesterday. Attend the Open Ed Conference in just 2 weeks, taking place in Providence, Rhode Island, and online. THECB is also going to be holding a second Open Education Town Hall on November 7th as part of Texas Digital Learning Week. You can go to our news and events group on OER Texas to receive more information about that. Texas Digital Library's next Texas Conference on Digital Libraries will be held May 20th through 22nd to 2025, which 2025, it's like the future, in Austin. And last but certainly not least, Open Texas will be back in 2026. So you can join the Texas OER Google group to get the news on that, or also the news and events group in OER Texas. Thank you all so much again, and we look forward to seeing you at some of these events and most certainly at Open Texas 2026. Thank you and have a great day.